So good to see some of the familiar faces and the new faces that I was just seeing a few days ago. Okay, Luca, shall we start?
Let's give it one more minute. I'm still seeing the
minute?
participant list going up.
All righty.
Oh, we could do the what do we usually do? Like good for us, it's what good.
Well, we asked
midday right now, and
exactly.
For some people, it's good morning. Others, it's good evening, because we have people from how many countries at this point?
We have, I saw 45 countries from this point.
Yeah, so you could put in the chat, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what it is where you are. We also kindly ask that you mute your mic if you're not currently talking.
So please mute your mic during the presentation. Thank you. Thank you guys very much for coming. I know you guys all have a very busy schedule, so to make some time to come to this session, we're very happy to have you here. Okay, so I think we can probably start.
That sounds good.
Great. All righty. So for the rest of the McMedHacks team, if you guys see more people coming, just let them in. Okay.
We could even disable the waiting room at this point.
I think there's still more people coming in. Okay, I'm going to start, and then Luca, you want to start, and I'll do the acknowledgement.
Sure thing. So, yeah, I'd like to welcome everyone here to the very first session of McMedHacks. Today is an optional Python refresher, so we're not really starting with the full program just yet. But it is a pleasure to see over 100 people in this call already. Yeah, we're really looking forward to working with you in the following weeks.
Yeah. Okay. So land acknowledgement, shoot. So if you don't know what land you're on, you feel free to go ahead to click on this link. So our virtual event is based in Montreal, Quebec, which is the traditional territory of Kanakahaka and is on land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank the diverse indigenous peoples whose presence marks the territory on which peoples of the world now gather. I would encourage you to learn and discuss about the history of the land on which you reside. All right. So let's get it started. Luca.
Yeah, so throughout the following weeks, we'll be sending you a lot of updates about upcoming presentations, the content thereof, as well as information about assignments and such. That'll primarily be happening through our email, which is shown here, medhacks2021@gmail.com. 2021 is the year we were founded. That confuses anyone. But please make sure you whitelist that email. Otherwise, the emails might end up in your junk. If you don't see our emails, check your junk. And we do have a guide on how to whitelist that email on our website if you're not sure.
Perfect. Some rules for our participants, same as last year. This will be familiar with you if you also attended McMedHacks 2021. So please treat your fellow participants with respect, and please use your real name on Zoom. You can rename yourself on here. This is for attendance tracking purposes later on. So the first 3 sessions are optional, as Luca just said. So, which means that we're not tracking attendance right now, but when the real thing starts on June 11th, we'll start tracking attendance for the later certification process. Also, please remain muted during presentations and workshops unless it is a designated Q&A time that will be monitored by our colleagues. And also ask questions on the Zoom chat, and we'll also have a McMedHacks Discord server, which will be ready in the next few weeks. And then we'll send you an invitation link, which you'll join, and then you can start asking questions during the session to the presenter and the instructor on the Discord channel, as well as the Zoom chat as you wish.
Yeah, so as previously mentioned, this is an optional refresher. We want to make sure that everyone can participate at McMedHacks regardless if you've ever coded in anything before, or if it's been a very long time since you've seen Python. So these are refresher courses. Today we'll have our introduction to Python itself. May 23rd, we'll be talking about object-oriented programming with Python. And June 6th, we'll be having a session on scientific programming with Python. The real meat of the program, where we really try to go into that intersection of artificial intelligence and medical imaging, will start on June 11th with our opening ceremony. Thereafter, we will have sort of a presentation session on Saturdays and a workshop session on Sundays. And those will just alternate every week. You can find the details, the full schedule on our website.
I'm here to briefly introduce our team. This is not our official opening ceremony, so we'll go through this very briefly. So this is our team. Dr. Shireen Abbas-Anger is the head of our Anger lab. She's our supervisor, part of the steering committee of McMedHacks, and our scientific advisor, associate professor of McGill University at the Jewish General Hospital, Lady Davis Institute, and also Dr. Farhad Maleki, who is also a part of the steering committee of McMedHacks, who is going to be our instructor of today. He was a part of our program from last year, and this year he is an assistant professor at the computer science department at the University of Calgary, who also helped us organize McMedHacks a lot this year. And also we have Dr. Miriam Dutra, who is our executive administrator, who we are very grateful to have on our team as well.
Yeah, next I'd like to introduce our student leadership team. And our dear colleagues and friends, Hussein, Alana, and Sebastian. These are the guys who are really running the show behind the scenes and will be present as mentors, and you might see them in the calls regularly. We couldn't do McMedHacks without their help, and we really appreciate that we have them. They're all part of our lab group at McGill, and we're super excited to have them on the team.
Yes, our friends are wonderful. And this is us. This is myself and Luca. We co-founded McMedHacks with Dr. Anger last June, and then I'm a master's student at the Anger lab. Luca was an undergraduate student when we did this together, who just recently graduated and about to start his PhD journey at the Harvard-MIT Joint Health Science Technology program this fall. All right, and now I'd like to introduce Dr. Farhad Maleki, who is our instructor of the day. Dr. Farhad Maleki is an assistant professor in the computer science department at the University of Calgary. Dr. Maleki spent his postdoc at the Augmented Intelligence and Precision Health Laboratory at McGill University, where he was focused on machine learning for medical image analysis. Dr. Maleki completed his PhD in computer science at the University of Saskatchewan. During his PhD, he worked on developing methodologies to analyze genomics and proteomics data at McGill. Dr. Maleki served as the president of the Association of Postdoctoral Fellows, and at the University of Saskatchewan, he served as the president of the Computer Science Graduates Council. Currently, Dr. Maleki is a member of the Machine Learning Education Subcommittee of the Society of Imaging Informatics in Medicine, and serves as a guest editor for a few journals focused on medical data analysis. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing the screen and I'll let Dr. Maleki start his lecture.
Eugene, just before starting, we've disabled the chat until Dr. Maleki is finished.
Okay.
And just so he knows, there is no possibilities for asking questions right now. They will be, if he wants to enable that. Farhad, do you want us to enable that? Maybe disabled, because there were so many salutations.
Yeah, I really love to, have interactive session. However, since there are a lot of ground to cover and we have limited time, it might be a better idea for now, to just go with covering the content, and then at the end, we try to answer all of the questions.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So let me see if I can share my screen. Do you have my screen and do you see my mouse
Yep.
movement on the?
Yes.
We see it.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for joining this session. Some of you might have some background with programming. Some of them might know a little bit of Python or more than that. And some of you might have other experiences with other programming languages. Regardless, we try to make this session available to audience from different backgrounds. So I'd like to start with the naming for Python. Python is a programming language. We use the term language because like any other language, we want to communicate. Communication this time is different. The audience of you is not other people, but computer. So this makes the nature of language a little bit different. It is definitely learning a programming language is way easier than learning a language. However, the way that you should adapt your thinking is completely different when talking to a person compared to when talking to a machine. Because unlike people that are really good with, vague concept, they can decode those concepts. Computer requires you to be extremely meticulous, exact, and without any ambiguity. Okay, so let's start with my first program in Python. Before going through that, I want to acknowledge that the first version of this presentation has been developed last year by our great members, Luca, Eugene, Sebastian, and Hossein. And also for this presentation, I'd like to mention I heavily use two different resources. Both of them are publicly available. And I recommend all of you to cover any concept that you might find not any issue with, or you might find difficult in these two links. Both of them, again, are open source and freely available everywhere. So let's start with first program in Python. Python is really easy to start with. And this line, which is really a print line, is the first program that you write. If you know other programming languages, you know that you need to have a setup for everything you do. And let's say, perhaps you have gone through the intro to Google Colab and how to use it. But if not, the process of working with Google Colab is straightforward. You have two types of cells. One are text, one are code. And in order to run these cells, you just need to press Shift and Enter. And this one goes to the next cell by default as well. So this is my first program in Python, and I want to run this. Very straightforward. It's a simple print function, that's print statement that give us really print something on the command line. We want to go through more and more advanced concept, and at the same time, we hope that by the end of this 3 weeks of Python programming, we make you prepared for your journey in AI, which we will be heavily using Python for this process. So first, let's start with variables and data type. When in general, we are good at memorizing things, and we even don't know how concepts are saved in our memory. And we don't have a specific address for each things that we remember. But for computer, it's not like that. For computer, you should have this explicit place that you save information or memorize information. So I want to go with an analogy. Look at a variable like a box. Here, I want to go with boxes that are really specific to one value. Down the road, we will introduce boxes that can hold many different values. So for now, each variable, look at them as a box that contain one value. This box needs to have a name. If you remember, I mentioned we need to have an explicit address, and the name for this variable should be explicit. There are some rules for naming. You cannot go with any name. Each name should start with a letter or underscore. So for example, you cannot start with @ or with numbers. Also, as I mentioned, you cannot start with numbers, and a variable name can only contain alphanumeric values, and it can be any sequence of it. Variables names are case sensitive, so if you use a name like a student, that is all of them is lowercase, and you compare this with a name that started is student again, but the first character is with uppercase, those are two different names. You should be careful if you use a notation, they are different. For example, here we have age and age all cap. So these are, you cannot use them interchangeably. So some examples of correct name, you can see the name total starts with alphabet, all of them are alphabet, correct? The same average, count, I, J. You see num underline lines. These are also valid because it includes alphanumeric value. If you had numbers in the middle or at the end, that would be also okay. Also, you can start with underline. However, I suggest you to use underline just for specific cases. In general, don't use it. Down the road, you'll find out in which cases we want to use underline in the next session. And some incorrect names, 7 total is incorrect because it starts with 7. This is not underline, it's a dash. So this is not a valid name. Customer count, a space is not also allowed. And here we have @ ampersand, and here person sign. These are not valid characters to have. And at the same time, value with exclamation mark, that's also invalid. So let's start with a string. We saw that we can print something, a statement, and that was really the first thing we approached. So I want to hold this string in a variable. So I need to assign it. The assignment operator in Python is equal sign. You see this in mathematics as equal sign, but it does in Python, it is really assignment. So this means that the student name is a variable that contains this literal, this string, which is John. The same here for Jane. And I can have a string can be a sequence of characters, arbitrary sequence. Sometimes you might have a sequence, a string that include quotation in itself. In those cases, you can wrap the whole string with a single quotation, as long as there is no single quotation inside the string. Here I have a quote. John said, and here I have a quote sign. If I use double quotation, that will be confusing because it's not obvious where is the starting point, where is the end point. If you have a there's other option. If you have a quotation in the middle of a string, you can use a skip connection, a skip character, which is back here, this character / you can have sometimes strings that are multi-line. In that case, you can have triple quotation. It works for both single quotation and double quotation. And when you have a variable, in that case, you can use that variable name instead of copying the whole string and use in a print condition. So here I just want a print message, and then I want to, this is the string that I had, prints another message, which is exactly the same, but here I have the same multi-line quotations and a string. Let's run this. We see that when we run this again with Shift Enter, we get in a sequential manner. Command will be run one by one. The first statement, which is message, here I have, this is the message, here I have the first one here. This is a multi-line string. And after that, I have another message, which is, this is another multi-line string. Here, of course, I have two more statement, print text1 and text2, and this is text1 and text2, two variable. So it's straightforward, really, to work with strings. You can, in the print function or print statement, you can have several things that you want to print, and you need to just separate them with a comma. Here I use a function named type. When I use type on a object, any variable, it gives me the type of that variable. Type of a string variable is shown by a star. You see class a star. This is type of this. We see that all of these, regardless of all of these variables, regardless of being a single line a string or multi-line string, all of them have the same class string. So that's the type of them. Okay. So we work with the string a lot, so it's good to be able to format it. There are two main ways to format a strings, FS strings and also using format. So FS string starts with having a, you start regularly, you have a string, but this one we call them FS string because F should start at the beginning, and then really before, it's a prefix for the whole sentence here, for the whole string here. But I have an option here to use some variable name inside a curly braces. So in this case, if I have this kind of formatted string, instead of printing whatever you see here, it goes and check what is the value of this variable and replace it exactly at that line. So here goes, take a look at year, it's 2. So I get, it will be replaced by 2. The curly braces also will be, they are just notation to tell the Python it is a variable replacement. And also here is the name. So if I have this, the sentence or the string will be, this is the second year that name is McMedHacks is being held. So that's one way. The other way to have to format a string is using format method. After having the string, you will have the dot and then format method. And inside the format, depending on how many curly braces you have, you can have, you need to have variables. So the first one will be year, the second one will be name. So this is, the output for this one is exactly the same. They are comparable. You see this here as well. And one thing you might see sometimes you see character like \n or \t. These are anything that comes after / has a meaning. So \n means new line. So if I have this, you see that I have 2 empty line here, and then the string starts. You can connect a string using plus, and that's also sometimes a convenient way to connect strings. But build a string by adding several strings together. If that's the case, you just need to, in order to make it eligible, have a space between these strings. Otherwise, they will be connected together without any space between them. That might be difficult to read. Once again, no matter how you create it, if you have a string object, the type of it will be class star. So a star is representing a string. A string, if for any string you have several characters, a sequence of characters, this means that you should have a way to access the character. The indexing in Python, this is a general rule, started from 0. The first element of something is index 0. And that if you have 10 elements in a sequence, the last one will be 10 minus 1, will be 9. Why? Because we start from 0, yeah? So we have also we can have access to a sub-string using from, for example, starting from this index 2 all the way to index 4. but excluding the fourth one. So here, for example, I have a sentence. The variable name is me, and me0 will be the first element. Here is I. Me starting from 0 to 5. This is a slicing approach. You have the starting index all the way to fifth. Be careful here that the fifth element will be included, but this does not mean index 5. This means index actually 4. Fifth element, since we start from 0, will be index 4. So we have this, the first character is I, the second one is a space, the third one is L, and continue after that, O and V all the way to the end. You can see it here. When I have this from 0 to 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I space LOV will be the output of this command. And here, sometimes you can see, you see minus indexing. Minus means start from the end. So -1 means the last character of a string here. Me -1 will be, in this case, will be C. Me -2 will be I, and so forth. The same way you can create indexing with a slice using negative value as well. If you don't have one part, for example, from 4 to, and there's nothing here, by default means to the end. So me from 4 to the end means from V all the way to the end. So that's one thing I want to. You see a split, by default, a split a sequence or a string from a spaces or anywhere you have a white space, really. The space is the default. You can change that if you add a character here, it uses that character. If I add a character here, it uses that character as a separator. Also, I have a strip that's the main job of a strip is to get rid of spaces in both sides. If I have a space here, for example, here or here, it gets rid of them for me. So let me, however, if you sometimes you have other characters and you might want to remove them, you can give that as an option here to a strip. So if I do that, and it will strip that for me. So here you see this one, which is the strip one, the last one will be removed. Most often, as I mentioned, we use this for removing a space. That's a common thing, which is difficult to see sometimes. So it's a good practice when you read a string and you want to this earliest spaces, get rid of them. That would be helpful for cleaning up the white space at the beginning or at the end. Okay. There are many methods that you can apply on a string. So when I say method, methods always needs to apply on a object. So everything in Python is object. Here I have a string object. And when you apply a method, you need to have a dot and then the name of that method, open parentheses and close parentheses. Sometimes you might have some parameter for that method. Here I used a single parameter there. For some methods, you don't need, by default, they don't have a parameter. For example, lower, which convert a string to lowercase, is like that. So this sentence is completely, this string is completely lowercase, but the first character. So if I apply lower, it will be completely lowercase. And if I apply an upper, all of this string will be uppercase. You see it here. Is upper, check if a string is uppercase. Is lower, check if a string is lowercase, and give you true or false. True means yes, it is. False means no, it's not. Is alpha means you can ask if this a string completely made of alphabet. So hello is such a thing, but if I add 1, 2, ampersand, add sign or something, that the result will be no. Also, a space is not alphabet too. So if you have a string containing several space, you always see false when call is alpha. It's numeric to make sure that the string is only made of numerical characters, digits. You can use this. It's returned true or false. So two methods that are really useful, starts with and ends with. The name is really telling what this means. If I have a string and apply this starts with, it gives me true if this string starts with this parameter here. The answer is yes. This is an example. Start with this. So the answer will be true. And ends with also check if the string ends with this parameter. And if you look at it, yes, ALMPMA, ELMPM. So it doesn't need to be a word, any substring. So even if this one is 1 character, that's correct. So in many cases, when you process text, you might want to just pick a specific lines that are start with this sequence or end with that sequence. You have a function that you will see for most objects, len. Any object that has hold a sequence of elements has this len object, which give us length of that. So len of this give me 18 because there are 18 characters in this. This means that, by the way, this 18 characters means does not mean they are 18 different characters. We might have repetition here. S has showed up 2 times here, for example. Also, spaces are characters. They will be count. If I add another space here, this time I expect to get 19 because I added another space. Replace, when you have a string, sometimes you want to replace a substring with another one. So I want to here replace example with instance. You see the initial sentence was a string was this is an example, but I change and replace example with instance. This is an instance. Also, another useful method is for strings are find. If I have a string and I want to see where is the first occurrence of a substring, I can use find with that substring. This one gives me 8 because the 8 character index 8, which is here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is the starting index for this substring. Here is an. Just once again, it doesn't need to be a word. It can be any substring. So if I use with a space here, I expect now to get 7. And membership. Sometimes you want to see if a subsequence is in another a string is in another string. So here, example is a string of this is an example. So you get sorry here. Let's see. Yeah, I'll go through the in down the road to see this. Okay, let me run this. And let me change this with this. I'll go through in details because that's something I want to go with a membership. So this is really a string, just to highlight it, avoiding confusion. A string is a sequence of character, and in check if this character is in that sequence. So I go through in details down the road when I go with sequences. I covered a lot at this point. Hopefully it's not overwhelming for you, but it is completely okay if you don't get a specific point here. You have time to go through it again. Also, we have TAs that will help you during this week and coming weeks with your questions. I'll cover your question at the end as well. Please feel free to take note. We'll come back to them. So that was a string. A string is really helpful, most often for communication with users, most often to write your result in a file, because you want to provide some hint. What is the content of this file? What's this variable means, or stuff like that. So, but most often when we work with scientific programming, we use numbers. So we should have a way to work with numbers. As with real world, we have numbers that are like counts, integer numbers, like 1, 2, 5, or 0. Also, we might have negative numbers like -20. So integer is a type that gives us that flexibility to work with integer numbers. And by integer, I mean there is a whole number. There is no remaining. 3.2 is not integer. So example of integer type here, you see -10,000, -4. So any number really negative or positive or 0 is can be considered an integer, as long as it doesn't have a dot and a few digits after that. So if you have -4 dot, that's not integer, even if you don't have any number after the dot. So like a string, you can have a integer value inside, put it in a variable. So I have a variable named total that holds a value of 1,000. And here I have a variable named number that holds a value of 20. And population size with 36 million. So these are different values that you have. Printing values, as usual, and type of them. You see class int. So this means that my variable is an integer type. It's not a string. Remember, for a string, we got class str. So that was integer. As I mentioned, there are numbers that are not integer. Sometimes we have values with, they are not rounds. So -3000.665 is such a number, or -0.0001 is such a number. Once again, if you have a value which is 0, but it is 0.0, Python considers this as a float. This is not a integer. Also, you might look at, no, it's 0, but you still have this dot notation and a digit after that. Yeah. Another notation that you can use for float is scientific notation. You have here, I have 3, the way that I write it, 3e -4. This means that 3 times 10 to the power of -4. Here I have -2.1 times e to the power 10 to the power of 4. And you can see them, you can print them. Type of these variables are float. Float is where we use really to cover these kind of values. Just note, if you have a value that is really, really large, here larger than 1.8 times 10 to the power of 308, in that case, this value is really big and it's considered infinity. So rarely you face such a number. This means that you have a 1 with 380 in front of it. So and no one gets such a salary. So, and rarely we see such values. In some specific cases that you might have scientific computing with large numbers, there are specific tools that or modules that can cover those values. So rarely you face those values. Okay, here you see when you print it, still the type is float, but the value will be infinity. So I covered a string, I covered integers, I covered floats. But if you remember, we saw true and false. What does it mean, true and false? So the same way that we process true and false, we have a Boolean type for things that are correct or not correct. Correct is represented with true, and not correct represented with false. We need this to add logic to our program, because most often in programs we want to decide on things. If this student is graduated, we should not charge the student for tuition anymore, or many other situations. So this condition requires us to be able to have a Boolean data type. That is straightforward. You have two values, true and false. Be careful that these start with uppercase T and uppercase F. And if you use it in a different way, you get an error. I have two variables here, and I print the value and I see the type of it. You see the type is BOOL, which stands for Boolean in Python. I like to cover another type, which is non-type. Sometimes you have a variable that you might, or something that you might say there hasn't been any value assigned to this variable, or it's really indicates a null value or no value. In some cases, it's good to use it. So this is similar to true and false. It's really a small data type, and this one has only one value, none, and this one should start with uppercase N. And it has a none type on its own. So a single value and a single data type. We covered a few of most important data types. However, in this series of lectures, you will find out that there are way more data types. And also in the next session, you will find how to define a new data type yourself when we go through object-oriented. Now that I have data type of different data type, the question is it possible to convert these data types? And the answer is yes, as long as the conversion makes sense. So I cannot convert hello to a number because that doesn't make sense. But if I have a string contains 12 as a string 1, 2, that's perhaps is a string representation of a number. I should be able to convert it to integer. So let's see. Sometimes conversion have side effects. Be careful about that. Here I have a value, which is a float value. You see that type is a type float. And when I convert this to an integer, I lose the, some part of this, because that's what I can have. I cannot have an integer value with here 0.6 with the remaining part. It's all the whole number. So be careful when you convert values. They might have side effects. Converting integer to float doesn't have any side effects. It's common, yeah. When you have a float is a larger box. This means that a float number can contain many different things, many different values, way more values than integer one. Anything that is integer, you can put it in a float without mathematically losing anything. However, your data type will change. So here I have an integer number, which is 12, and I put this, I change it to float. The way that you cast or convert a variable is to put the name of the type that we have here, float, and open parentheses, name of the variable. This way, x that was integer will be converted to a float number, and that float number will be put to y. So here I have an expression that converts the x, which was integer, to a float. When you calculate the float value and the computer has that one, it assigns, using this assign operator, to y. Here you see the value here. You get a float point, and also the type is float value. Converting numbers to a string is straightforward. You just need to use a star, which stands for a string data type. So I have the x, which was 12.5, which is a float number, star of x, convert this x, this float number to a string and assign it to y here. Okay. Converting a string to float, of course, this is, I see a float number, but wrapped in a string. So really at this point, x is a string, but it makes sense for Python to be able to convert it, and it does. If you say floats of x, it's converted to a floating point number and assign it using this operator to y. So the same here. Here I can do the same. We see this one. So here I see a number that look like integer, but when I apply it, it still works because 12 can also be a float number. So conversion to Boolean using BOOL function. This is important to know. If I have a string that contains here, a string that contains any non-empty string, when you convert it to a Boolean, it will be true. Here, someone might think that this is false, so Boolean should convert it to false. No, it's not like that. Be careful. This is very important. If your string is empty, it will be the evaluation of a true Boolean will be false. Otherwise, no matter what's the content of this string, you will get true. Here, one example. And here you see that for empty string will be converted to false when you transform it to Boolean. For numbers, any non-zero value will be converted to true, and 0 will be converted to false. This is also important to know. So here I have 12.3, and when I cast it to a Boolean type, it will be true. And here I have 0, which will be false when I transfer it to or convert it to Boolean. Okay. Converting Boolean to numbers. This is also important. If I convert a Boolean to integer, true will be 1 and false will be 0. The same works for float as well. But when applied a string works more intuitive. If your string, your Boolean value is true, it gives you a string true. If it's false, it gives you a string false. So sometimes when you're running your code, you might face some error. Google Colab give you some really a nice way to connect to Stack Overflow, which is a place when where you can ask most of your questions. And if you find you face with an issue in programming, there is a good chance that someone else have had the same issue. That person went and asked, and another kind and generous person answered the question. So this means that you might quickly be able to access, get the answer without even asking a TA or instructor. So here, on purpose, I make a mistake. I have a string which is not integer, and I try to make it integer. So here I get an error, and you see that in the Google Colab you have this. However, if you don't use Google Colab, feel free to just go search for copy paste this error that you might have or part of it, and paste it in Google search. You most likely you'll find a good match there as well. You saw here. So sometimes for a code, it's a good thing to have some hints. I provided here some hint here. Convert a non-zero number to Boolean results in true. So this is anything that starts with a let's say a number sign or a hashtag will be considered as a comment. The compiler for Python, really ignore it, as it doesn't run it. It's a comment. It's just for you to know what's going on there. Okay. See where we are. Now we know variables. We know how to convert or cast different variables of different type to each other. Now that I have these variables, I need to work with them. In order to work with variables, I need to apply some operators on it. As you know, and you have been working perhaps with many different variables during different activities and different operators, like math, for example, classes. You know that we have several operators work on numbers. So some of these operators can be extended for your own data types. If you define a data type down the road, perhaps in next session, you will be able to define a addition or subtraction for that data type. And the meaning, what does it mean? Subtracting two variables of two different objects. It might be something that's different, of course, different from object to object. And it's something that you define actually when you write your own classes. So quickly I'll go through arithmetic operations. Plus, minus, for multiplication, let me fix this one. For multiplication, you have for multiplication, you have a star as regular you have. So these are, the first four are common. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. You see a integer division in Python. So if I have, let's say, 5 divided by 2, you get 2.5. But if you use integer division, 5 integer division, which is a slash by 2, give you 2. So it just give you the whole number and give you an integer actually. So that's something you should be aware. That's a new notation. For reminder, sometimes I have, for example, a value 5 when I want to divided by 2, I want to say what is the remaining parts. And that's a reminder or modulo operation. And also exponent. Exponent in Python is to a star. So let's go through a few of them. You see, I apply all of them, plus, say, minus, multiplication. And here I have mathematical division, and here I have integer division. You see the difference. 11 divided by 2, mathematical division is 5.5, and integer division is 5. And 11 to the power of 2 will be 121. So this one is exponential operation. So those are straightforward arithmetic operation, nothing really new there. We have some relational operators that compare two values together. Something very, very important is to know that equivalence, when you want to check if two values are equal, you need to use equal sign. Less than or equal, bigger than or equal, and not equal is exclamation equal. So the only things that might really be new is equal sign, which is two character, and also not equal. So here you see these values, and you see that they return true or false, depends on if x is not equal to y, so you get false. So x not equal to y, here the last one, you get true, because x is not equal to y. So those were relational really operator. Another category is logical operators that I have here. Sometimes I want to see if combine several condition and build a more complex one. So I need to do something if x is bigger than 1 or y is bigger than 1, or similar things. We have three options here: or, and not. These are intuitive. Or is the result of or is true if at least one of the operand for or is true. Here, for example, here x bigger than 200 is one operand, and y bigger than 200 is another operand. And is true the result of and statement if both of the operand is true, and not really is true the result of it is the operand is false on its own. It's really negate what you have. It's important to know the order of operations. I provide a link here. Feel free to go through it. My apologies if the class session is not interactive. As I mentioned, there are a lot of ground to cover, and that's a little bit prohibitive. I leave one activity for you to go through it. Since we are running a little bit late, we are almost halfway, but we have just 30 minutes. I try to skip this. It should be straightforward for all of you to answer these. If you have any question, feel free to reach out to our TAs, or at the end of the session, I'll stay in the call for your question if you want to go through some of them. So now we know how to work with, we know variables, we know different data types, we know how to work with this data type, how to operate on this data type, do arithmetic calculations, apply relational operations, as well as logical operations. So we have some reasonable amount of tools in our toolbox to do something. And I want to first approach a conditional statement. As I mentioned, sometimes we want to calculate things in a conditional way. So if something is correct, do this. Otherwise, do something else. So if else statement is something that Python helps you to really approach those situations. The way that it works is that it can evaluate the first condition. I'll go some examples of conditions down the road. If this condition is true, it's run the statement. It might be one line or several lines here, doesn't matter. All of this statement will be run. And the next elif and all the way to the end will be skipped. So if the first condition is true, that's straightforward. If the first condition is, the if condition is wrong, is incorrect or false, it doesn't run this statement or statements. It goes to the next one and evaluate this. If it's true, condition 2 is true, it goes and run a statement 2 or a statement under elif and skip the rest. If it's not true, if condition 2 is not true, it goes to next elif and the same all the way to the end. It's important to know that if condition, you might elif and else, elif or elifs and else statements are conditional. So you might have a condition with only if, no elif, or you might have a condition with one if and one else, no elif. So that's also is a possibility. So let's go through a example. Perhaps all of you or some of you might have considered converting your grade from 100 to a letter grade. So here I want to do that. Something I like to introduce is the input function. This is to get input from the user. So right now I want you to enter your grade or a grade. So this code can convert it. So any grade bigger than 97.5 will be A+. So if I enter 98, this statement will be 98 is bigger than or equal to 97.5. So the result is A+. And the rest of this code will be skipped. And I print your letter grade is the result, which will be what you get, A+. So let me start with something. I want to go with 98, for example. And let's see what we get, A plus. So this means that these lines, none of them will be executed because only one, the moment that one of these conditions is done or correct, the statement, which might be here is one line, but you might have several lines, doesn't matter, will be run, all of them, and the rest will be skipped. So please feel free to run this command. I assume you all have downloaded and have access to the notebook. Okay, this time I go with a really poor grade. And I expect to get E because my grade is not bigger than or equal to any of those numbers. So else will be run. Else will be run where nothing else is correct. So it's really a default. If nothing else is true, run this. So in some cases, this is helpful. Some cases might not. So this is why it's optional also. So another example here, you see another example. I just, for the sake of time, I try to skip some of these examples. But since if is important, let's go through this. Here I ask for a number. You enter a number. Based on that number, if the number is less than 5, I print this function, this line. If that's not the case, I go down and check this. Is the number less than 10? If yes, print this line. If not, go try the next line. If the number is less than 15, print this line. And if that's not the case, print this one. So let me go with a number like 2. I expect this 2 is less than 5. I expect this to be run and nothing else. And if, let me run it again, once again with shift enter, you run. This time I enter like 100. And I expect this line to be, because 100 is not less than 5, is not less than 10, is not less than 15. So the last or else part should be evaluated. And you see that the number is greater than or equal to 15. Okay, in order to make my message correct, let's add some equal sign too. Okay, not that. Yeah. No, it's not correct. It's less than 10. So less than 10, that's correct. So let's go with, this time I want to give a negative number. So -5 is less than 5. So straightforward again. Once again, elif and else are optional. You only have one else, but you can have many elif. Else doesn't have any condition, but elif and if should have a condition here. So feel free to run the next one. Here I ask for a age. Let's say we go with age. And this is sometimes a good practice, but people make mistake. For example, in order to enter 22, someone might just have a mistake and enter 222. So it's a invalid value for age. You want to ask the user to, or prompt the user for this mistake and say, oh, fix this, it's the issue. So you find some idea how if condition is valuable. You can, inside a if statement, you can have any valid statement in Python. This include another if statement. So in that case, you have a nested situation. I just speak this part. Please feel free to go and work with this. I have another activity. I want to give you a couple of minutes to write a elif else condition that calculates convert grade. Really, it's a shortened version of the code that we had. that's converts a grade to A, B, C, D, or E. So there is no A plus or A minus, B plus or B minus. So feel free to start working on this, and I think it would be a couple of minutes might be enough for this. Sorry, I can't give you more time for this. Feel free to copy paste the code from here and remove some parts of it. So this is the code that you want to. Some of these ellipses are not necessary.
So meanwhile, I'll ask you a question, Farhad, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sure. So like from MATLAB, there's this like switch function that, for example, a variable could be like any, could be like here, like the case you have so many else and ifs. Instead of using else and if, is there like an equivalent of a switch so that we could say if switch equals something, and then like instead of writing if, else, if, else, if, else, it would be like a switch kind of scenario. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah, exactly. So actually, the decision to remove switch from Python has been a really decision based on good style of programming, and switch leads to some issues in programming and really help with creating a spaghetti code that is difficult. One reason because of that, switch has been removed. Usually, as a best practice, we don't have a really long, condition. There are, best practices in programming in an object-oriented manner. When we have a situation, you need to cover a lot of different, let's say, sub cases. You can apply those. I think that would be above the scope here, but there are ways. We don't want to have 200 lines of code and 200 line of if else, because first of all, it's cumbersome to write. Second, it's possible you make a mistake somewhere. So if I make like here, instead of 90, I use 91 or 92.5, I might have a mistake there.
Right.
So
what is the alternative to using? So instead of using if and else, I mean, I didn't know, but like apparently there's no more switch because people decided to take out switch, as you mentioned. So what is the third alternative? Like you said, like just like having things as objects.
Yeah. So yeah, you can really use cover specific cases. First of all, simple switch cases can be completely covered with if else elif. But for cases that are more complicated, we have in an object-oriented manner, we define object. These objects really each, let's say, I go with two design patterns that might be helpful. That I'll share a link perhaps after the meeting to highlight some of them. So a factory method or a factory object should be something that you use for different cases. And that's way more advanced. It is not for checking value, even for type and sometimes implicitly will be run. So the programs know which code to be run for which situation. You might get a glimpse of it in the next session. However, that's also a little bit more advanced, and I'm not sure it will be covered completely in the next session.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'll look into the factory stuff that you just mentioned. Like that's a good few. Thanks.
So Martin also had a question. I since we are a little bit running short, sorry, my apologies. We try to cover all of the question down the road. So let me copy this code and move it there. So, oops. So here, I will go with this. I don't have any A plus, so I remove that one. And no A minus. I need to update the values, no B plus. Okay, no B minus. Perhaps the better way to remove these. And also no D minus. So let's fix the bound. So really I did the same. However, look at this. If a number is bigger than 90, it's A. So if number is bigger than or equal to 90, it's considered A. So if that's not the case, any number, if that's not the case, means that the number is not bigger than 90. So it's definitely bigger than or equal. It's definitely less than 90 or and bigger than 80. In that case, I go if the grade is bigger than 80, it is B. And the same way, if it's bigger than 70, it is C, and it's bigger than or equal to 60, it is. Yeah, this is 60, anything between 60 and 70. This is anything between 70 and 80. And at the end, you have the final one. I think I have it correct. So if I get like 95, oops, let's see what's the error here. Okay, bigger than or equal. Not supported between instance of a string and integer. Yes, so this is a good error message. We'll read this as the input. Input has everything as a string, so we need to convert it to a number. Float. Great. I can convert it to float, and then let's run it. And let's say I go with 95. And I forgot to add a message here to print. Oops. This grade is. Okay, let's make a mistake here. Great. And you see here I have a mistake, and you can guess. I created a string, but actually it is not an F string. Let's say go with something like your grade is great. Why? Because I forgot to have this F here. You see the color change. And now if I go with that, I should get, oops, oh, sorry, not great, results. So 25. So your grade is A. So that's a really if condition. It's straightforward, but it's extremely valuable. When I say straightforward, does not mean that you should be comfortable using if-else statements right now, because this is the first session, but it needs practice, and practice makes perfect. Don't be afraid of error. There is no programmer writing a code without error. It's if you notice, I made a mistake right here, but the important point is that to go and not be afraid of making a mistake. If you see a mistake, read the error message properly. You might be able to find from error message what's this mistake and solve it. And if not, go always Stack Overflow and Google are best resources for programmers. And if you, if even at that moment you can't really find an answer, reach out to our TAs, and also other members. You will be connected with all of the audience. Peer help is really valuable and efficient and fast. So far we work with object that's only contain one value. To make an analogy, I told you that this is a box that only has capacity for one value, one object. However, there are many situations I want to cover a large, a large collection of objects, like a box that contain all of my books, So I want variables to be able to cover a sequence of values, for example, or a set of objects. Python gives this really easy and straightforward. Let's start with list and tuple. List and tuples are sequential data types. This means that there is a sequence to them. And also assign them the first element, second element, and all the way to the end. So how to define a list? Very straightforward. A sequence of data type within a square bracket is a list. Here you see a list of strings: apple, banana, cherry. A list of numbers, a list of Boolean values. Also, a list can be a mixture of different data type. Here I have a string, I have integer, I have Boolean, so that's also possible. A list can also contain a list, so I can have another value here that is also a list. So this is a list. This is also valid. So you can work with lists. There are lists are really important and really useful when working with data processing, because most often you don't have one data element. You have a large number of elements. This, for example, you might have 100 samples. You want to have 200 images, stuff like that. So let's go through this. I have an empty list, just a square bracket without anything. It's empty list, it's straightforward. And here I have a list of a few animals: cat, bat, rat, and elephant. I print it. You see, this is how it prints. And also I print its type. Type of the class is class list. You can access to elements of them using index. Animals 0, indexing always is with square brackets, is cat. Animal 3 is 0, 1, 2, 3, elephant. Animals -1 from the end, -1 would be elephant, -2 will be rat, -3 will be bat. So sometimes you can use a slice of the list from element 1 all the way to element 4. So sorry, here is 0, 1 all the way to 4, but 4 is not excluded. 1, 2, 3, and there is no 4, yeah? So this means from bat, rat, and elephant, bat, rat, and elephant. You can achieve this using slicing from 1 all the way to the end. And also, as I mentioned, with negative slicing as well, -1, -2, -3. If I say -3 to the end, it will be like here, it will be the same, bat, rat, and elephant. So those are slicing and how to access a list. We can also have, to find out how many elements are in a list, use a len function. Here I use a list of, so the animal had 4 elements in it. So len should give me 4. Also, so here you see that there is a append method. Sometimes I have a list and I want to add element to the end of the list. So append give me that possibility, append a number. After appending, I have a new element at the end of the list, and that makes the list longer, 1 element longer. It was 4 elements long, now it's 5 elements long because I added rabbit to it. And if I look at the last element, which is animals -1, it gives you always the last element of list. It is rabbits now. One thing that I want to highlight is that list can contain repetitive items. You can add, for example, instead of rabbits, you can add, for example, bat here. So here I have, okay, let's start from the beginning. Here I have, again, 5 elements. It's just bats. The last one is bats. So sometimes I want to add element, but not one element, a sequence or a list of elements. So I have a list including 2 elements. I want to add these 2 using extend method that works with a list here. So you see, and now since I added these elements, so once again, let me run this again to have a clean version. So for IPython notebook, something is important. If I run this command again, the list, I have a list with 7 elements and add these 2 again to it. So in that case, a list will be 9. This is why I say let's start from all, have a clean version to avoid confusion. So here I can check if I mentioned n earlier to see if it's a character in a string, because in one way you can look at a string as a sequence of characters. For list, you have a sequence of different things, so you can really check if a string is an object is in a list or not using n. So if you remember, we never had a cow in this list, and we never add such a thing. Yeah. So if I say cow in animals, I should get false, but cow not in animals should give me true. Bat in animals should give me true, because bat was one of the elements, and not in animals should give me false. So that's something. You can change element of a list using index. So I want to, I have a list, it's cat, let's say, let me converse right now. It's cat, bat, rat, elephant, bat, sparrow, and parrot. I want to change the second element. This is element 0, 1, 2, change it to elk. You see that. So you can update and change a list. List is mutable, means that you can change it without losing the object, or without need to create a new version of it. So you can also insert an element in the middle of a list. So in that case, you keep here. I have a list. Let's see. If I have a list, I add a lion as the second element. It's really putting lion here. It doesn't replace the elk. Elk will be there, so it's insertion. You might have it. And I mentioned append. You can append elements that are repetitive. Sometimes we want to find out what is the index of, first, let's say cat here. The index of cat here, I want to find out here. It's 0. The first element is cat. Sometimes I want, okay, I know the first element. I want to see what is the next one. So in that case, I know this first one was cat. So let's see from the index 1 all the way to the end of this list. Is there any other occurrence? So let's check for that. In that case, I get 8. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 elements is also cat. So you can use index as well. You can remove a data element from a list. Here I remove cat. This will remove the first element of it, first occurrence of it, which was the first one. The 8th one is still there. Also, you can use pop to element a specific. So here the list was updated, and it is bat, lion. If I pop element 1 is lion. Lion will be removed. So and now if you look at it, index 0, 2, 0, 1, 2, index 0 should be. So if another way to remove element is with del, de for delete, del for delete. So that's another way to handle that. So there are other methods. One nice thing about Python is that give you a lot of power and a lot of methods available. That's one thing. Plus, the community is really open and provide you a lot of tools and code that are already written, and you can easily use it. So if I have a list, you can sort the element of the list. You see here, the list is sorted. And if I want to erase the whole list, you can clear it. You can check for equality of list using equal sign. Make sure that this is double, let's say double equal mark. And here I have L1 and L2 equal at the beginning, so I get true. But if I add an element append the element to the L2, L2 will be A, B, C, and also have a D, has a D. So in that case, they are not equal, you get false. You can expand a list. Here I have a list with 3 values. I can put this list in 3 variables. It's important if I have a list of 3 values, you should have 3 variables named here. So in that case, you can easily expand a list. This is handy in some cases. Tuple is similar to list, but with one very important difference, and that's the case that tuple is not mutable. You cannot change a tuple without, you cannot append to the end of it. If you want to change it really down the road, it create a new object. The previous object won't be affected. So that's a mutable things. It's straightforward to create it. Everything goes to between parentheses. And you have functions like type, len, count, which count how many of this element, for example, how many apple occurs in this list. Here is 2. And also you can find the index, which index hold banana. Here is 1. So you can see this. The same with expanding, you can expand a tuple as well. If you want to do a lot of update and change to a tuple, it's better to convert it to the list. It's casting, similar to other ways, other name of the type that you want to cast a variable. So T was a tuple, I want to cast it to a list. I apply some changes I want, and then this can be converted, the list can be converted tuple as well. So you can see that straightforward. Something very important to note that if you have a tuple of length 1, you cannot put it in parentheses. You need a comma, otherwise it will be considered a variable inside the parentheses. So this is very important to have in mind. So set is another data structure that I need to cover. Set is really similar to list, but with a difference that for sets, we don't have any order. So, and also no repetition. So apple, banana, cherry, put them in curly braces. You can really come up with this. You have 3 false, false. But as I mentioned, even if you assign it like that, this set 3 has 2 elements, true and false, because repetition is not allowed. So you see that one. And here also some common membership in an element is inside the list or not inside the list. You can see that. You can add a element to a list using add function. I add orange to this list, this set. And also sometimes you can, for list, we had the extend method that's we're able to add a list to another list. Here we have really similar functionality, but using updates. So if you have a set, you can update it with a sequence of values, like another set. So here I have this set has 3 elements, and I add this 3 element to it by using updates. And if I print it, you see that the longer list includes all of them. If I remove banana, you see that element has gone. You can do that. Discard is another method. The difference between remove and discard is that if there is no element in the list, remove return raise an error, while discard does not do that. So that's other things. Note that sets are not ordered. So if I go at set.pop, it's randomly give me a element. So you can see here, there are some operators for list, like union, intersection. If a list is subset of another list, or difference between those 2 lists, Python gives you a functionality that easily use those as well. I have, I think yeah, I have dictionaries as well to cover as so just double check with uh, the team here. So do we have time to cover a few topics that we have here?
How much more time do you think you would need?
I think I need 10 more minutes.
Okay, go for it. And if anyone would like to leave, this session will be recorded and be sent to everyone by email anyway. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
perfect.
So
Also,
this session won't close till 12:30. So you can go ahead and if you need 10 more minutes.
perfect.
Yeah.
So I'll be available for QA after that as well. So dictionary is very, very useful working with data processing because it gives you a lot of flexibility writing code. So dictionary is very straightforward to create. Dictionary, unlike other data type collection that we had, like sets, list, and tuple, is a different in a way that you have a key value pair. So you have a key, and for that key we have a value. So one very important thing to consider: dictionary was not a ordered container before Python version 3.7. Before Python, 3.7. So for 3.6 and earlier versions, we had unordered dictionary. But after Python 3.7, the implementation of the dictionary makes them ordered. So this means that if you want to access them, the order that you get them is the same order that you add them to the list. The first one, first out, really. I'll talk about the order down the road, what really that means here. I have a dictionary, the key, colon, value. Here, I have brand, the value for key is brand, the value for brand is Ford. Another key is model, the value for that is Mustang. Another key is year, the value for that is 1964. So let's print this, print the dictionary, you can see that. And you can have access to the elements of the list, but the dictionary. But the difference between dictionary and list, for example, is that here, instead of using indexing, you have keys. You use those keys to have access. So it's because of that, it's way more readable. Plus, it's convenient for data processing, and also it gives you sort of quick access to change the list as well. So you can change a value. So this year for this dictionary was 1964. I want to make it 2020. Easily can do it by the key. So dictionary, square bracket, the key, and the same for others as well. So that's straightforward. A few functions that I have here. One of them is values. I mentioned that you have some keys. Keys for this dictionary is brand, model, and year. Values for this brand is Ford, Mustang, and 1964. So I can really have access to all of the values using dot values of methods, or all of the items. When I say items, means key value pairs as a tuple. So it's a tuple, brand, Ford. Another tuple, model, Mustang. Another tuple, year, 1964. You can see that. Really, it gives you a list like, or a sequence of tuples, key value, key value, key values. Also, we have a keys method that give you all of the keys for this dictionary. So if I have this, let me go through get. Get really is similar to if I use the, if I use this, I mentioned that you can access a dictionary values using the key. You can do that using a get method as well. So here, let's say, okay, let's see what's the, it's not defined. Oh, we forgot to run the cell. That's why we get the error. So you see that. And also, We can have membership. The membership is for keys. So we want to see if model is a key in this dictionary. If that's the case, do this. And also you can delete a element of a dictionary. So this dict model, if I want to remove it, I go with del function. And then after that, if you print it, you see that there is no model version anymore. So since I have a few more minutes, I can quickly go through the for loop. In many cases, we need to process a large number of items. And in Python, we have loops for doing this. Loop is straightforward. You have a for loop or while loop for the keyword is for, and this you have an index in, and this is a sequence. It can be a list or it can be a tuple. So here you have a range, which is a similar. Range is a function that starts from this value all the way to this value, but not including that one. So it will give me 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. So here I have a list of elements, and I try to calculate the summation of elements here. So I go with, I say, okay, let's have a total which is 0, and then we go through this element by element. When I see an element, I add it to the total. So for x in element L, this means that using L, for can iterate over a list. You can have here add x to total and put it in the total again. And at the end, I can calculate that. In Python, there is another function called sum that calculates summation of elements. I want it as a check if these two are the same. You can see that they are the same. Otherwise, you get an error. However, let's make it more complex. If I have if I want to calculate all of the positive elements, in that case, the sum doesn't work. So I do the same way, but I apply this update total plus x to go to total again, only for positive numbers. In that case, I can calculate the summation of positive values. So while loop is a similar way. I don't go through the while loop. Most often, you can use one or another. It's interchangeably. For loop is the most common one, but feel free to go through the while loop. Make sure that you know. I want to quickly go through functions. Sometimes you read the code, and this code you wanted to have it reusable. You want to reuse it again. For example, if I want to, if I write a code, I want to reuse this code several times. So one way is to copy paste, write it again and again, or maybe copy paste it. But it's painful. It's ugly. You might make mistakes, and if you make a mistake, you might go fix it somewhere, but not in the other places. Functions are helpful for this. You really package your code. The only difference is that most often you need to return something. So when this function works, does the task, return something. That's one thing, which is the result of this calculation. And the other thing is that you might have some input. So this function operates on some data types, for example, a list or something. Here, I have a list that's calculate the frequency of elements. So I think this one is not necessary, this line. I leave this to you to go through it, but the nice thing is that now that I wrote this, I can apply it to different lists, for example. So I don't need to write this few line again and again. Just name the function, and it's the function return the frequency. Here is the dictionary, and it will be printed. So here I have a sequence, a string. I can apply it to that as well. So the same can be applied to different sequences. I leave just a couple of more functions, just as something to consider. For functions, it's a good idea to leave some comments. Comments usually are between triple quotes. And here I have a function to read and write from file. You'll find this in the next lecture as well, but I just wanted to show how valuable it is. This, whenever I want to read a sequence, write a sequence of data to a file, this sequence can be anything, really, anything, a sequence of numbers, sequence of line, a string, whatever. Can easily call this function. The same things for read, you can really read here. So it makes it way easier for me to continue this. In general, using modular programming and function is good. Sometimes you have a sequence of functions or objects. You'll find out about object and modular programming in the next lecture, but I wanted to just have a hint here. It's a good idea to package them in one file, and then you can import that file. When you import that file, you have access to all of the functionality and functions and objects defined in that class. This is something that you will see in the next lecture. Also, there are many, as I mentioned, the power of Python is that you have many packages available. You can really go and reuse them. You can have your own packages that works for your own task as well. So if there is something available, definitely use the available one because they have been tested, they have been documented, and perhaps they are bug-free. Among those important ones, it really is straightforward to import the module and then use the function. Take a look at the documentation for the module. For any module, there is a good documentation. Some of the modules that are available and useful, and you will see them: scikit-learn, NumPy, PyTorch, SciPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, Random, OpenCV, iter2, logging, and JSON. These are things that you will see along the way, but I wanted you to know these modules exist, and we will be using some of them in the future sessions. Sorry, I was over time. So that's the session for today. I'll be available and open for your questions.
Thank you so much. I think that was really, really great session. I think you covered a lot of the most fundamental basics of Python that we'll use later. Thank you so much, Farhad. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen.
My pleasure. Once again, I highly recommend everyone. I provided the link on the first cells, W3 School Python tutorial and automate the boring stuff with Python. Those are really helpful resources. I will not expect anyone to be able to see this session for the first time and be able to do all of them right now. These are really something that's a starting point. Familiarize you with this concept, and there are resources available. A 2 open source free one with a lot of example, more specific W3 School one is really something you should try to go through it. There are examples of everything covered here.
I agree. W3 School is a really, really awesome resource. So we move on to the Q&A session. Maybe Hossein and Sebastian, would you guys like to unmute and moderate this part?
Yes. So
you guys can see my screen, yeah?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that we will allow the chat. So now you can ask your questions on the chat. And Hossein and I will anyway set up a Discord channel so that you can ask questions whenever you have, like not only during this meeting. So please feel free to ask anything.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Hossein?
No, I mean, Sebastian said it all. From next week, we'll have mentors. So instead of me and Sebastian, it will be 2 other mentors that would be taking your questions in the chat here on the Zoom, and also they would be answering the questions on Discord. The mentors will also hold office hours. So, after you guys get the notebook and you go through your examples, and if you have questions, you could just drop by the office hours of the Discord, and their mentors can answer your questions there. So,
Yes, and we're working hard to set up the Discord channel now. We had a server you guys who were with us last year would probably know that we had a server, McMedHacks 2021, and we had text channels and voice channels, where text channels had separately week 1, week 2 till week 8, and you can ask all your questions in that specific week. And then that also facilitates with peer helping each other. If you have questions, other people, your peers, participants can help each other as well, and will also be available to help. So we're still in the process of setting that up because we're in the preparatory weeks. So we're going to send you guys an email about an invitation link to the Discord channel afterwards. And after this, Miriam, our executive administrator, will also send you a conclusion sort of summary email to you guys, including the Google Colab again, as well as the recording of this session, as well as any sort of reminder of the next sessions. Okay. So I guess this is it. Oh, yeah, and I forgot to say, you guys probably found us through some sort of social media or website. So that's our website, Twitter and LinkedIn, if you are want to get more updates more directly. Will there be a Google stamp like last year if we attend all the sessions? Do you mean like a certificate? Google stamp? Oh yeah, certificate. Yeah, we'll start tracking attendance starting on the at the opening ceremony. So at the end, we'll be able to provide the certificate again, and we'll give you guys more details about it later on. Is there any more questions?
So let me highlight and emphasize the value of peer learning. I highly recommend everyone to go and sign up in the Discord channel. That would be really helpful. You can ask your question, and also you can ask your friends question. You never learn programming but by doing it. So don't be afraid of making mistake, and just try to, follow the suggestion. As if you see an error, Google it. If you can't find the answer, ask it in the Discord channel. There are people, TAs or other members that can answer. And always we are here to try our best to provide you support.
Yeah, so Ali Kazemi has had a question. And the question was, when you use convert into float, they're the same because just place 0 after the dot. Is that true? So yeah, so I think like the question is, when you're like, if you put the dot, then it'll be end. If you don't, if you put the dot, it'll be float. If you don't put the dot, it'll be end automatically, right? Like that's
yeah. So each literal, by literal, I mean anything that is not inside a variable will be evaluated by Python to see what is the type. So if you write a 12 without any, anything after that, it will be considered as an integer. But if you have 12 dots, even without 0 or any number, Python will evaluate that as a float number. Anything you see in Python has a type. So this is why you can call type on everything.
And I see a few questions asking about Google Calendar. That's, I think, there are a few emails asking about the Google Calendar. So we'll fix that as soon as possible, and we'll share it with you again. And in terms of recording, as I just mentioned, we'll send another email including all of the recordings of this session, as well as the Google Colab, to everyone that registered. Google Colab isn't opening. Interesting. I don't know why.
If you have a Google account and you click on the link we sent, you should have a button at the top called Open with Colab, and this should open the notebook the way it should. And we also have a question from Upamanyu. Sorry if I said that wrong. Is there any homework for this week? So Farhad, do you know if there are?
Yes, you will get your homework by the end of the day. this would be something to put some of this content in practice. You have a few days to complete that, but the value of this homework is for you to, practice really. Also, there are a few activities. Please make sure to go and do those activities in the Google Notebook.
Yeah, thank you. I was also going to say that just going through the notebook and running the cells can be for you a good practice, and try to change a bit the code and rerun to see what changed, etc.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So if this is the last of our questions, I want to thank everyone very much for attending. I want to thank Dr. Farhad Maleki for the wonderful presentation. And we'll see you next time. The next session, which is also an optional Python session, it will be on next Monday, and we'll send a reminder email again.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I think we have a question by Moshtaba. Sorry again if I said that wrong. What's the main difference between tuple and list? So I think a list, you can modify it on the go, like you can increase its size, add any elements to a list, but a tuple is a fixed size, and it would be like something that doesn't change, like a string. Once you set it, you cannot really increase its size, or it's not modulable like a list.
Should I close the session? I'm going to stop recording now. You're welcome, everyone.